Happy New Year, happy holidays, and welcome back to the podcast. So, you're back on Peanut Butter Neya time with your host, Neya, me. We are entering a bright and happy 2024. Can you believe it's 2024 already? Paris, the Olympics already. I don't know, some other sporting events, but it's just crazy. 2024. 2024, yo. It's crazy because I feel so old now. I still think about the 2010s being like about 2 years ago, but I realize now that they were more than like 6 years ago, which is just disgusting. Anyway, anyway. So, first of all, Happy New Year, happy holidays. I hope you all had a really restful time away or spending time with family or doing whatever you were doing over the end of year. I had a awesome time. I had such a busy November and December last year. It was like weddings, families visiting from both sides, Alex and mine, going home. But then in December, we finally had time, like at the end, to recharge for 2 weeks. And it honestly felt like forever. It felt like we were gone away for like a month. I don't know. I feel like as you reach, you get further into the depths of adulthood, somehow like 2 weeks off feels like you've just been switched off from the world for so long. Anyway, so we went to the Maldives and we went to Sri Lanka. So two new places that we'd never been before. And honestly, I feel like somehow it's been a long time since I've been to new countries just because I guess I was making it from COVID, visiting like family, going back to places that like I hadn't been in a while to see family or admin or life or friends. So it was really so nice to go out and explore a new country again and just, discover and learn. I love traveling. I just think it really like amplifies one of my values of curiosity. So I just love being out there, seeing it all. I'll do a quick recap. Maldives, absolutely insane. If you follow me on my Instagram at Supertanayan, you'll just see I had a great time. It was disgustingly beautiful. The water is so clear. And like, when you have such a high expectation of a place and everybody says how it's so amazing. My parents were like, oh, the Maldives is so great. And you're like, it's just not possible to have all this expectation and get there for it to meet your expectations. But golly gosh, did it meet the expectations? Like as soon as we just like landed in the Maldives, even before we got to the island, and we were in Malé, which is also an island, but just like the main town, it was just already such an awesome experience. So we had just the amazing time, spent like 4 days literally just snorkeling every day, swimming because it was just so clear. You didn't have to go deep. You just snorkeled and you could see like everything. I saw sea turtles. I saw sharks, people. I saw the sharks. The first day, I literally saw a shark and Alex was like, that's a shark. And we just swam so fast to the water. And then our neighbors were so funny in another bungalow. We were walking to dinner. They're like, did you guys see sharks? And we're like, yeah. And they're like, it's okay. Don't be afraid of the sharks. Like, they're so friendly. So it was so funny. Like, they had been, they had more and more experienced Maldivians because they had stayed there for like 2 more days and they already had the shark experience. So it was so epic. Like it was just such an amazing experience. We stayed at the W Maldives. Service was like incredible. I've been to other W's and they're okay, but like the W Maldives as a luxury resort, just like insane. The service was just unreal. I will say, being strategic Asians, because the food is super expensive when you go to these islands, right? So, you have to go there and buy all your food there. You don't have any other option because it is an island. Like, there's literally nowhere for you to go and get like a cheaper meal. So, you have options of paying like a half board or a full board. So, we were totally game to pay the half board, which I think it was like maybe 300 USD per person for breakfast and then like a 3-course menu dinner, which I think is like I think it's very expensive, but at the same time, they have to import everything. Like thinking about that and just thinking about the logistics. And after observing the logistics in Maldives, I'm like, oh my god, yeah, charge your price because they have to like get a separate ship to come collect all their trash, and that ship takes to a separate island just for trash. It is wild. The logistics are just wild. Anyway, food wise, we ended up managing pretty well. Like we actually brought like all these croissants and snacks and 2 packets of shin ramyun to the Maldives for the first night we got there because like we get there late afternoon, so we were like, oh, I think we could just like eat something. Anyway, we ended up getting that food to like kind of last 3 or 4 days. And we only ended up spending like $270 in the Maldives for food, which is crazy. And all the other expenses that we had was just a seaplane. which was very expensive. It was like $1,200 for the seaplane for two people return. Mind you, that's like a 30-minute flight. But anyway, long story short, guys, go to the Maldives. Just do it. So great. The other place that I went was Sri Lanka. Really interesting. I think because I've lived in Myanmar, it was so interesting to see all the parallels between these two different countries. Even though they're like actually like geographically not that close at all, they have so many parallels. Like as like maybe as like predominantly Buddhist countries, similar like food styles. The people are kind of similar. I think Myanmar people are nicer, but yeah, it was just super interesting. But anyway, whilst I was on these holidays and experiencing the world, seeing different cultures and people, I really like realized. Oh, I guess I got to observe and experience a lot of people, and it brought me to the topic of this episode, first one for 2024, which was the idea of adding value to your environment. And I think over the holiday periods, even with just like not even on these holidays, but like also just with all the time that I have with people over November, December, I really observed and this notion of like adding value to your environment was really sticking with me. And yeah, it was really interesting. So I think the other thing I realized over this period was just that I'm very affected by people's energy around me and people's emotions. So I think I really validated and confirmed that I am an extrovert. An extrovert means like, you know, you get energy from other people. Like you, and it's not that I want to socialize 24/7. It just means that like if I go out and socialize, I get energy from others. Whereas an introvert maybe might go out and be like, oh, no, this is not giving me the energy. Like I want to go home. So definitely an extrovert. But being an extrovert, I think like I'm super observant of other people's emotions and how they are in a situation and how they're behaving and how that energy then contributes to the environment that we're in. So very interesting. So growing up, my dad like was always like to us, oh, you know, what, like if you're going to be in an environment, if you're going to be like going to a social environment, you're going to someone's house, like make sure you contribute and you add value to the experience. Like people want people around that add value, like that are contributors, you know, not someone that's going to sit there and just like not really offer anything. And when I say offer anything, I mean it's not like you monetarily or anything like that. It's just like, you know, you add to the conversation, you are inclusive of others, you make a dish, you like teach something to somebody, or you're just as a community adding value to that experience. Um I think this is true. However, what I think I've learned and how I would sophisticate my dad's statement is just like it's how you also it's like it's not about just contributing, it's actually how you contribute, um which I think is the really important part. So what I mean is like there's no value of just contributing for the sake of contributing if it's actually not valuable to the situation at all. And I'm sure many people would have experienced this with like, especially if you're Asian and you're in like an Asian household and or you're around older people now, even like teenagers, you know, like there's different phases of that where it comes out. It's just like how they add value and contribute to an environment is very different. And I think the perception of that is something that is what I want to talk about more today. So I think I'm not saying that, you know, we need to be this wealth of positivity all the time and everything we say is positive. I think my mum and I have this discussion sometimes because we have different views on like certain things where I think that's not really adding value where she thinks it does. But I think that, yeah, you don't need to be positive all the time. That's not the whole idea of contributing. But it's more of the notion of saying things that are meaningful to a situation, which then therefore it becomes hard, right? Because everybody has this notion that what they're saying is meaningful because it's maybe meaningful to them. But I think that's the issue is that we nowadays as humans, or maybe we've always done this, but I feel like people get really tunnel visioned into like their way of thinking, their views, and how they are presenting themselves in a society, and kind of tend to start to lack self-awareness of like, how am I actually contributing to this environment? And is it actually meaningful? Like, are others around me receiving my comments and my contributions as something that, like, the way that I think that I am giving it off. Because I think when you ask yourself that question and you look back, potentially not. Like sometimes maybe there's situations where, I make a joke and it's not funny, it's actually hurtful towards somebody, right? And I can call out, I have a tendency to be like maybe too much of a jokester, and certain people don't respond well to that. But it's the ability to sit back and think like, oh, okay, like I see that person isn't really responding well to that comment or that joke, and I should pull back. But I think nowadays a lot of people lack that self-awareness to think and, I guess, on the fly, like self-evaluate and be self-aware in that sense. Because I do think it probably does take a bit more skill and a lot of, I would say it takes a very high level of self-awareness. So I think I wanted to kind of set some examples, as I love to always do that. So I think one thing was like I was on this trip in Sri Lanka for 10 days and we hired a driver to drive us from Colombo like all around, and it's very common. And so obviously keeping in mind he's away from his family for like 10 days and he's on the road with us, which is like super grateful, but also that's your job. So like, I mean, I have empathy, but to a certain level. But he was like so moody, it was crazy. I think this is where I realized like, oh my God, I'm really affected by like people's energy levels and emotions, because even this driver who is not really like, I'm not on holiday with the driver, but I think I personally care a lot about like other people and feed off the energies of other people. And so I was like, oh, I'm actually affected by this person, even though I don't really know him. But every day we'd hop in the car and it was a different mood. Like generally quite grumpy and like not really, I feel like really unwilling to like do things, even though everything was like already agreed upon, but just like a lot of attitude. And I felt like it really frustrated me because I was like, well, I have to sit in a car with you for like 3 hours and you're just going to give us attitude the whole time. It's not a pleasant experience for anyone. And this is where I was thinking like, okay, crazy, but people might think I'm delusional, but I think like, you're in that environment with us. You should also be more self-aware of how you are behaving. And like, I think personally, like that's your professional environment. You should be showing up with like a level of professionalism and service. Whereas I felt like he was very moody, and like one thing that got me was like we like got to this hotel and he was like, oh, how much did you pay for this? It was like $100. It's like, oh, you could have gotten so much better of a place somewhere else. And I was like, well, what's the point in you making that comment? Like it was just irritating me because it made me feel like he was like like an uncle who would definitely make a comment like that. But I was just like, dude, like I feel like one, that's unprofessional, but two, like, is that comment like adding any value? No, because is there anything that you can do to like action on that? No, because you've already made a decision to stay here and we are here. So like, what's the point of making a comment like that? See what I'm trying to say? Like, contribute, but think about how you're contributing. I think this shows up a lot for me with like family, especially like older family. You go to a meal with them and it's just always this like constant narrative of like the shoulda, woulda, coulda. You know what I mean? It's either like them reflecting in their lives of I should have done this, or I could have done that, or you could have done that, or you could have done this. And I think I want to talk about like age as a separate podcast another day, but I feel that mentality and that narrative, it's just like so exhausting to listen to. But let alone that, like I'm okay, like sure, if you feel like that and you're going to talk to yourself like that by yourself, great. But like don't bring it into like I take you out for a meal and then you come and you're like, oh, you should have gone to this place, it's way better for this prawn noodle. Hello, I'm here taking you out for the meal. What value is your comment adding? You know what I mean? Like, it's just insufferable is what I think it is. Because if I was to turn around and say the same thing to them and pick at everything that they did the way that they do to us, they would absolutely hate it and be like, okay, well, I don't want to do anything like nice for you anymore. Because then you become in this situation where you feel like you're just giving and you're getting absolute donuts back because you don't even get like a nice smile and comment of like, oh, that was a lovely meal. It's straight away like, oh, that prawn noodle place is better than this prawn noodle place. Why would you come here? So I think it's interesting because I think in those situations, an often response from your elders or like a dad or a uncle or a mom or in that situation is like, oh, I'm just saying, like, that's just my opinion. Well, great. But once again, it goes back to my original comment of like, you can just, like, what's the point of just saying something for the sake of contributing, right? How you actually contribute and how meaningful that is to those around you versus just yourself is the bigger thing, right? Having that self-awareness of like, oh, okay, like I could say like we should have gone to that restaurant instead because that's better. But how can I better phrase that to, be a valuable experience for all? Maybe we could be like, oh, this prawn noodle is actually quite tasty. Have you tried this other place? They also do prawn noodle. It's really quite tasty as well. I think you might like it as well. And then you can try it and see how you feel about it. It's just like rephrasing it so that's a conversation versus like this, oh, that other place is better. Because like, what is the other person on the other end of that supposed to really say to that, and like how are they supposed to respond other than to feel like dejected? You know what I'm saying? So I feel this exists across like all humans, and I think that mentality and that approach of really just taking a moment to think, like, of those around you and communicating valuably. I think for myself, I'm pretty consistent with my mood. I'm generally quite upbeat, but I also feel like I'm not overly positive, but I'm like a realistic positive. It's not that you can't say negative things around me. Go for it. Like I say negative things, but it's like saying it within reason where like you can say how you feel, but does it need to be the one narrative that you're telling yourself all the time? No, I don't think so. I do think that this whole approach of like adding value and contributing is something that can really be taken into like relationships, friendships, acquaintanceships. I don't know, is that a word? Because I think maybe somewhere else that we can often kind of lose sight of this notion of adding value is in our relationships. I think maybe that's the easiest place for us to kind of fall short with this, because we can get too used to who we're around, or we can be having a different intention as to why we're in that relationship or in that friendship or having those acquaintances. I think we can often forget to like kind of check in with ourselves as to who are we keeping around us. Are those people contributing to my life? Am I contributing to those people's lives? Like vice versa, you know what I mean? Because I think in nowadays people often fear loneliness so much and being an outsider that they will take on a lot of garbage in replacement for company, which I think maybe it's just a natural human behavior, because we all have a sense of like wanting to belong to something. So in a sense it's like, okay, I will mold myself a little bit in different ways to feel that I belong or I fit in or I get along with certain people. But I think it's really important throughout life to really sit down and check in with yourself as to, is this person just being toxic in my life? Like, what do we actually talk about? Are we talking about substantial things? Are we just sitting here rambling about the same thing every time? Are we growing as two people together in this friendship? Or are we just kind of not really helping each other grow and improve ourselves as humans? And I think they're really important questions to ask yourself when you're in a relationship with another person, romantically or friendship or just like platonic, whatever. It's important to ask yourself that, because I think same thing with like getting into this mentality of one way to do things, tunnel vision with the blinders on. It's really easy to do that when you're in a relationship as well. And I think that's something that can really help grow and strengthen your relationship, is making sure you're checking in and saying like, are we like not only saying things that add value, but doing things that add value? Are we doing things meaningfully, like intentionally, where we're benefiting us as two people or as a group to really improve ourselves and be, I don't know, essentially just like to actually gain something nice out of this relationship. Anyway, so those are the things that I really thought about, like, and had epiphanies about, I guess, over these 2 months. I'm not sure if I really articulated that very well, but I think all in all, I think it all comes down to like a level of self-awareness, you know? I think it's so easy in this current status of the world with all of our distractions to just not have self-awareness and blame it on wanting to just have an opinion. And I really don't like it when people, you know, don't want to accept that maybe what they're contributing is not valuable or nice, and lean back on this comment of, oh well, like that's just my opinion, so if you don't like it you can like take a hike. Because if we were all to take that approach, then like what sort of communication or world would we live in? And that's why we have all these freaking issues around the world, because people just lack self-awareness, they lack empathy for other people, they lack like this ideology of doing something for others and not being so self-centric in their mindset. I think so many people are so self-absorbed these days, and it's always like, what am I getting out of this? What am I getting out of this? Versus like, I think the other view is that I think communication is fundamentally a community. I think it's the fundamentals are driven on community, hence communication. In the sense that like when you're communicating with someone, it's not just about you. It's about having this synergy with another person or a group of people where you can share your thoughts, share ideas, communicate in a way that's, I guess, what's the word that I'm looking for? Oh, I forgot the word that I'm looking for. Like, I guess it's like nurturing an environment where you can grow and learn and experience things. But I think if you go into this communication with, you know, take that example of just making a statement of like, this restaurant is better than that restaurant, it's not actually giving anybody any opening to have a conversation. It's just an opening of, that's my statement. I don't really care what you think. And it makes it very hard for the other person to respond and engage. So I think, yeah, I think when you're going into 2024, I think it'd be great to keep this in mind. You know, like checking in with yourself once a quarter, like, or just in certain situations, maybe like you have a conversation, it doesn't really go to plan, or you have a conflict with somebody. Like, conflict is so fine. I'm all for conflict. But it's like, why did you have that conflict? How could I be different in the next time? Is my communication style maybe not great? Am I would if I put myself in the other person's shoes that's receiving what I'm saying, is that like something valuable? Would I want to receive that comment on the other end? I think that is something that everybody should think about this 2024. Even me, like consistently, not even me, not like I'm like a higher superior power. I mean, just like for me as well, I would just continue to do that as well, because it's so easy for us to just day by day go by, living our lives, continuing as we are, and not being accountable for how we are contributing to our environment. And so just keep the top of mind and ask yourself, am I adding value to this situation? Am I actually contributing meaningfully to this conversation, to this party, to this social event, to this work meeting, right? I think just keep that top of mind, because you often surprise yourself with your answer. Anyway, that is the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had feedback that people felt like I was a bit too on the fence in my other episodes, and too trying to cushion like what I was saying a bit too much with, you know, that meme that's like gives all this advice and is like, you do you though. And I think the you do you though for me is like me trying to be more neutral. But I disagree with that. Like I do think that I actually have like strong opinions on all these things, and what I'm saying is actually my opinion. And I shouldn't soften it because you guys are here for my opinion, like my thoughts, my way of thinking. And I, in this moment, am being reflective on the fact that am I contributing to you guys in this podcast if I'm going to sit on the fence and say like a you do you though? Probably not. Because you know what? Guys can get that somewhere else. Here is like my journey is in and my intention is to be truthful, honest, and authentic. And so I will do less of the you do you though. Because you know what? Don't do you do you. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great start to 2024. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.